Welcome, my name is Merle Whitney. In this lab tutorial, we will be creating a cluster. You want to click on Tools, select Failover Cluster Manager, and we're waiting for the manager to come on screen. And we can see the snap-in coming in. We want to look on the right-hand side under the Actions pane, and we want to click on Create a Cluster. We can see the Before You Begin screen, and the screen is reminding you that you need to use the Validate a Configuration wizard before you create the cluster. Click on Next, and it's going to ask for the server name. We're going to browse for our server name, and we're going to look for the server in the list of servers listed. We can see the search engine searching for the servers here in the right hand corner. And as soon as the list comes up, there it is. We're going to click on the server that we need and click on OK. And we see here the server comes into the list of selected servers. Then we want to go ahead and click Next. At this screen, we don't want support from Microsoft in this particular tutorial. So we're going to say no, I do not require support, and we click on Next. We're going to be asked for a cluster name. Here we have the access point for administering the cluster, and we're going to call our cluster Cluster A. We also need to type an address, and the address that we're going to enter here under the address column will be the address for the cluster. So we're going to give it 192.168.254. We're going to try 209 and say Next. As you can see, it's validating the settings. It says you are ready to create a cluster. The wizard will create your cluster with the following settings. Gives the name of the cluster that you had given, the name of the node, which is the server that you're creating the cluster on, and the IP address of the cluster. To continue, click Next. Please wait while the cluster is configured. And you can see the cluster going through. It's forming Cluster A. Here is the summary. You need to go through the summary. Make sure that you have everything that you need. And you can click on the View Report screen, which gives you a report of everything that was installed with the cluster. You can close that screen and click Finish. And we now have a new cluster called Cluster A. And here we go on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see Cluster A. You can see the machine looking for the cluster. Let's expand the cluster and look and see what the cluster has. For the cluster, you have below the cluster roles, nodes, storage, networks, and cluster events. If we were to right click on the cluster, we will see that our right click allows us to configure a role. It also allows us to validate the cluster, to view the validation report. Here we can also add a node. We can close the connections. Let's go to more actions. Under more actions, we see that we'll be able to configure the custom quorum settings. We're also able to migrate roles. We're also able to shut down the cluster, destroy the cluster. Notice we also have the cluster aware updating setting on the right click of more actions. That is the end of this tutorial.